Hi, everybody. Welcome. Tonight we are on with Bald and Bonkers and Barry Fitzgerald.
What's that?
Ghost. What?
It was still playing. It's fine.
Oh, really?
It's fine.
Hi. How you doing?
Introduce yourself now. It's fine.
Okay.
You want me there?
Okay.
It's fine. It's ladies and gentlemen. You know,
Ladies
it was a very short. If my friend Dakota's watching, Jesus, my friend, that was the quickest trailer I've ever seen in history. I know.
We're like a minute and a half, so I'm startled.
So
we're gonna put this on Dakota. Okay.
So
hi, everybody. Lisa. Okay. Lisa Fry.
You might go. You go.
Wrong people.
That's Italian.
What?
You can't make that stuff up.
No, you can't make it up. All right, hold on. Reset.
Right.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Bald and Bonkers. Tonight we are here with Barry Fitzgerald of Ghost Hunters International fame and author of many, many books. So welcome, Barry. It's so nice to meet you and see you here. And, of course, then we have Chris.
Yes, if me, don't mind me. I'm just like a figment of everybody's imagination. You know?
No, you'll have things to say. I know you will, so it's perfect.
I've got questions to ask him about his ghost hunting days, you know. But I know you've got questions to ask him about his book. Because ladies, I will say this, ladies and gentlemen, while you're here, all links to my friend Barry Fitzgerald's books is in the description, you know. Please go and check out his books. But please also check out The Deception of Gods and Men, because it's an absolute fantastic read. It's one of the best I've read in a long time.
Thank you, Chris.
I had to do that for you. Man. Off you go, Lisa.
Okay, so thank you so much for being on today, Barry. This is, I don't know if Chris told you, I was really looking forward to this. Just because this is how, like, my whole life kind of gelled with Ghost Hunters and all that. So can you tell us a little bit what you've been doing since Ghost Hunters? Because they're not taping anymore, correct?
No, they're not. No. So I've been working a lot with the writing, of course, developing my own projects, and did a lot of short documentaries there that went out onto my YouTube channel. We ended up investigating as well. We went to Peru to investigate the three-fingered mummies that were appearing in the desert in Nazca. So we wanted to see what was going on there. Were they alien mummies, or were they something else? And it turned out they were indeed something else. So we blew the lid on that particular series of events, and in fact, recently I've been spending a lot of time on a small island here in Ireland, filming archaeologists as they were conducting a dig into the ancient past of Ireland, and this particular island is surrounded by high strangeness. So there could be something coming from that project that I'm very, very intrigued to bring forward. I can't give any more details on that, of course, but it has been an exceptional journey and it was a great experience to work with the archaeologists on that project.
That's awesome. Now I have to ask, because for a brief time I was following the three-fingered mummies, and can you tell us what the other is? I mean, I know that.
The other is that they were all manufactured, and we were using a team from Russia, from France, from England, and in fact there was a group of Peruvians that were working with us as well, that were helping us blow the lid on this, and we couldn't get an answer on the DNA sequencing. Every time it was all over the place. We couldn't understand why we were getting different figures, but it was whenever we got the copies of the X-rays, that's whenever the bone specialists went to work on it, and they peeled these things apart, and we discovered which particular bones and from which animals they were using, and the orientation was all wrong. The people who were putting them together didn't know what they were doing, and some of the bones were also harvested from dead infants. So all of this was going on, and because a lot of the skin of these particular mummies were being dipped in various different chemicals to help stretch the skin over the bones, that's what was affecting the DNA. So that's all this was all in the mix, and of course then we quickly found out that there was a lot of money being attempted to be made from this particular series of bodies, and the black market was heavily involved.
See, we had been yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just saying that's shocking, using like kids' remains. That's actually really. I never knew that. That's really bad when you go.
Well, you know, I think I find myself, I suppose my response to all of it is highly contradictory, because I didn't like the idea that we were being fooled, and there was a lot of big names were involved in this to fool the populace, but when you go to Peru, you do see poverty there, and the poverty is unlike anything else that we see here in the West, and that in some aspects I can understand why some people were doing this, but you can be sure, as there's a hole in the duck, that the people at the bottom weren't making money from this. As always, it was the people at the top.
Right, right. So we have we teach a class on Mondays, and one of the things that we were doing was we were watching the series through the large corporation that was, putting the series through their broadcast, their viewership, and we actually have one of the guys from the chat that was in our group that night going, this is a fake, this has been proven a fake. So I actually love the fact that you were in on helping, because I didn't know that you had helped disprove that, because I do love the fact, I love putting science to the test here, actually putting the metaphysical things to the test of science, and we talk about that a lot, because I always feel like science is always trying to catch up to some of the things we do as well, where we're just, it's hard to explain some of the things that happen on a more metaphysical area, and it makes it look bad, when people try
it does. Although today we're living in a very, very strange world of science. Science is becoming the new religion, and it's unfortunate that we're also seeing this carelessness within science, where a lot of it cannot be reproduced within the laboratory. Right. So we need to be very, very careful and put on the brakes and just say, easy now, easy, and take our time going through this. And there is a lot of the metaphysics that does cross into the scientific fields. There is already a lot of work out there that has been done in regards to this, but a huge amount of it falls to the wayside because it doesn't fit mainstream. Right. So, and there are narratives there that need to be questioned within the mainstream. Right. But it is, science in itself is exceptionally valuable, and there is no doubting that. But we have to be careful about how it's used, because it can, like any sword, it's a double edge.
Right. Correct. So I have to tell you, the first 30 minutes of listening to The Consequences of Gods and Men, that's Barry's book that I've been talking about on our group like all this week. And because I'm like, okay, I only have this is a 4-hour book and I have only so many hours in a day, so I'm trying to, drive and listen. Yeah. And in the first 30 minutes I called my husband like 3 times. And I'll pause the book, because when we drive long distances, we travel an awful lot. So when we drive long distances, we always put in an audiobook, and then there's a million times it stops and we discuss what's going on. I just did that to him while he was at work and I was driving on the road, which he loves. He has to love it.
Oh, God.
So I called him. I'm like, oh my gosh, honey, these things, I've already heard these things and that you were talking about in your book. So I started, I'm listening to the, because we don't have to know everything. It's the beautiful part of every day you learn something new. And I'm sitting here going, wait a minute, there's fairies and there's fae? What the heck is going on? My world just melted. And I just went, let me call my husband. So he just loved it. But can you tell us, your basic premise for this particular book? And I'm just going to come so much better for you. I'm going to have questions too. Don't worry.
Sure.
Go for it.
The Deceptions of Gods and Men came about because we wanted to explore what was communicating with us, what was coming through the void, and why were we seeing high levels of deception. And how did it interact with us? Where do we see this interaction happen? And is this across a broad spectrum of research fields, the fringe research fields? And it was. There was a common thread that wove its way through a lot of the fringe research fields, and a lot of the phenomena was connected in that particular premise. And from our standpoint, it was a case of identifying in principle the masks in which this phenomena wishes to be recognized. And of course, we are also to blame for some of those masks, the way that we interpret the phenomena that's coming through. But more to the point, it was about tracking the phenomena in the way that it interacts with us. Because when we tracked the mask itself ended up, it delivered us directly into the face of a brick wall. We were getting nowhere with the mask, but by tracking it by the phenomena in which it interacted with us, we were able to go way back. And that's where we were making these connections and seeing the commonality between a huge amount of the phenomena, which we thought before was pigeonholed in other sectors and didn't come out of that pigeonhole. Well, guess what? It is coming out of the pigeonhole, and we're looking possibly at the same source.
Wow. And, you can see, and I'm going to push this out here as to how I see that, like the differentiation between how humans see one God versus another God, kind of like following down through history is what we're talking about, right? Kind of like that.
Yeah, that type of thing. And, there are many gods, of course, that are derived from possibly three different other deities and amalgamated into one.
Mm-hmm, right.
It's about breaking all of that down and saying, okay, what are we actually dealing with? How is this coming through? And why is there a high level of deception with it? And that's why we ended up dabbling into the seance fields and ufology and cryptozoology and all of that.
Because they all kind of track,
Yeah, they do.
Because I haven't done this my whole life. This is what I do with my life now. I didn't start until I was 38 years old when it was like, all of a sudden you get to see dead people and talk to people that aren't standing there in front of you. So that was a huge change and shift in our life. But I always look as the better because we've had so much positive change. So you're talking about the deception, but do you also find good behind that as well?
Yes, but the problem is, you see, within today, especially within the research fields, and those who are just out for giggles, they don't understand that there's a more serious aspect to the phenomena behind all the palaver and everything else that can go with that. So from our standpoint, what Brian and I wanted to do was to really pull that apart, look at it, and really put a stamp on it and say, wait a minute, let's examine this. And really, the driving force behind this book was to challenge what was coming through. And this is a very, very important part to consider and remember, that if we end up making communication with something or developing communication with something that comes through the veil, that should not mind, if it's there for a positive nature, that should not mind a few questions for clarity. But many of them don't. The moment that you become suspicious of them, they're gone.
Right.
They will not remain to be questioned onto the spotlight. They do not like good cop, bad cop. And that's an important thing to remember. And that, by all intents and purposes, that speaks volumes. And
it does.
It does not want to remain to clarify its position. And all we're wanting to do is to establish a line of trust. So for that, we have to question. And if that does not wish to question, and if it even gets a whiff of that, we are not completely sold on this, it's gone.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting about that, though, is you find that people that, and you say out for giggles, right, to start on this type of path, and they do it just for the fun of it, which I did in the beginning because I didn't know any better. I didn't have any teachers at that point. You end up communicating and bringing things around you that are negative, which I did stupidly, and figured out how to get rid of it, and had to deal with that right out the gate. So I think that was a huge lesson, but I never really kind of thought of it that way. I just kind of went, oh, look, I picked up a negative, whatever, and didn't think of it as anything larger than just, a particular entity in one spot. But it's really, really interesting. So you talk about, you talk about the Anunnaki a lot in here. Not necessarily the Anunnaki, but in the beginning, I was really writing notes, okay? So in the beginning, I was listening to about the Hopi, and they call them the Anu, the Ant people. They call them the Anu, and then the Naki is the word for friend. And I was like, well, look at that right there. It really did shock me because, I know about the Dogon tribe and how that name has gone across the world, and people are like, how does this tie up? But I mean, you're really looking from like what most people think of, Mesopotamia, and all those areas over there that have mostly talks about the Anunnaki, and then you're talking about the Hopi Indians, and it just is such a wide variety that it just shows you that we have no idea at the broad scope of. Really, we have no idea what's going on.
It is amazing to see the commonality between cultures and tribes globally, and GHI gave me that advantage to do that, to meet people of the Maori, of the Zulu in South Africa, and places like that. So, I was able to question where they were coming from, and at that particular point, I'm thinking in the Southern Hemisphere, hold on. How are they encountering the same things that we were encountering in the Northern Hemisphere from the Celtic perspective? How is that possible? And then started to look at, is it possible that we're looking at the same thing north and south of the hemisphere? And that, of course, then started the wheels to turn, and eventually, of course, result in the release of the book, The Deceptions of Gods and Men.
Consequences. I keep saying consequences so much. I do. And I have it in my book too. Okay. So you have written quite a few books. You have written, and I was really interested in, I haven't gotten to it yet, about the Banshee and the modern encounters with the Banshee. I'm enthralled. That's my next read, by the way. I just think it's truly, we're over here in America, we don't have anything like that. I mean, not that I'm aware of.
Well, you see, in regards to the Banshee, we understood that particular entity from the name itself, and the name was rather shallow in its interpretation, because we have Banshee in Gaelic. Of course, it is a woman of the she, woman of the fairy, but the term she is not necessarily relating to the fairy per se. it's actually relating to the Neolithic mounds that dot across the both islands here and in the UK, and we have to understand that means woman of the mounds. Banshee is woman of the mounds. Who built the mounds? People from Mesopotamia.
Really?
Yes, and that is a huge thing, because recently I was going through some of the cuneiform tablets, some of the translations from cuneiform tablets, and came across a reference to an entity that was identical to the Banshee. Then it made sense. Hold on a second. The people who were writing the cuneiform tablets came here to build the passage chambers. So it's quite possible that she came from there to here. And, when we go and we start looking at a lot of this particular phenomena, we see, again, this is one of those little connecting factors throughout a lot of the phenomena. We find a lot of it around rocks. We find a lot of it in rock strata, in rock plateaus, in cliffs, in cave systems. Again, it's back to the rocks. And David Paulides in the United States, within his work of Missing 411, he's gone on record to say that a huge amount of people that disappear in the United States under unusual circumstances disappear in rock formations and boulder fields. And we see within UFO phenomena, for instance, we'll see the craft flying into a cliff face and back out of it again. We see a lot of cryptids disappear into rocks.
Right.
So it's all about the rocks. And from an English perspective, you have the entity, the old folk tale of the goblin. But if you track the name back in etymology, there's a value in etymology, understanding the direction of words. You go back into Middle French, and it's gobelin, and you move back into Germanic terminology, it becomes kob. Kob means hole in stone. So it's coming from stone.
That's so interesting.
So there is a huge value in etymology, even and Chris, from our standpoint, because my land is very similar to your land, in that aspect, and when you consider the likes of the naming of townlands, there is a value in understanding the etymology of how that townland became known as what it is, and today we've lost that. We have absolutely lost that. For instance, I was at a location, maybe 10 years ago, and I stood on the banks of this island, watching these huge lights, multicolored lights, zipping back and forward over the landscape. And for anyone else, they would say, "What is that? That's a UFO." But whenever we took the compass readings and went back to the maps. And again, going back to the townlands, we find the townland was named where the lights were appearing, Ballinashi, settlement of the She. We've got these huge lights that are appearing still in that location. So the phenomena is something that has been known for hundreds and hundreds of years.
Wow. Isn't that amazing?
I find that really interesting about the mounds, because not far from me there's a place called Oban, and I was there not long ago, and there's mounds there, and I was talking to someone about it, and I was like, "Oh, I've seen strange lights there." And they were telling me that it was a ghost story that their father had told them, but I don't know if it was ghost, because it was strange lights round about these mounds, and then they would move to the next mound, and then they would move to the next mound.
Yeah,
you tend gas from Venus.
You tend to get a lot of the UFO phenomena around the ancient sites.
Yeah.
I have interviewed people who have stood on the west side, observing these craft as the craft are examining with some type of light probe these ancient formations before disappearing into them and not returning.
Wow.
So there's a huge amount that we have completely forgotten, but our manuscripts are full of ancient references to this phenomenon, both cryptozoology and ghosts and of course UFOs and everything else.
I just want to add. No, I want to add. I was just off the cuff as you were going through the cuneiform tablets. It was just like I was reviewing the cuneiform tablets, and I'm like, okay. I do it all the time. It's my like off-duty thing that I do is go through the cuneiform tablets. You're so good. You're just like you've done these really cool, amazing things that most of us were like, seriously. But it was just you just did it. It was like, okay, it's all good, but it sounds fascinating. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's a lot for me. There's a lot in what our ancestors have left us. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of value. And I find that in today's society, we have folks coming along and saying, in their life experience of this life, well, if it didn't happen to me, it doesn't happen. It's not real. It's imagination. It's all make-believe. It's fake. So they're determining thousands of years of experience from our ancestors, and with one swipe of their hand and one lifetime, they're poo-pooing it. And I think that's a huge injustice to our ancestors.
Chris.
Yeah. You're talking about the ships and strange objects round about certain stone structures. Look at the UFOs that have been seen. Is it Mount Shasta?
Yeah.
Then you've seen like UFOs going into volcanoes, which is very strange. Just before they erupt. I mean, what is your thoughts on that? What do you think that is? Do you think it is alien craft, or do you think it's like some type of energy?
Yeah, Lisa or me?
I'm asking you, Barry.
Mount Shasta, by using the satellite technology, we're able to identify key areas, both north and south of the hemisphere. And I think it's just slightly west of Mount Shasta, there is a key area. There's a focal point, not the mountain itself, but just west of it, about maybe a mile or so, I think, if memory serves me right, is a key area, and it's heavily forested. So that would be a place that I would be wanting to go to, if I got the chance. But now, in regards to other areas and what people are seeing and everything else, there is a problem with that, especially whenever we're trying to call the phenomena in, because there are side effects to that we really need to understand. When we're calling it in, we're inviting it, and that puts us into a very unusual area. And also the phenomena that can come with that can be very, very troubling for a long time, especially trying to shake it off. So we need to understand that standing outside, shining lights into the sky and making contact is okay, but be aware that you've opened an invitation.
Yeah.
And that goes right across the board, that you got to understand what you're doing. And like many things within paranormal investigating, we open the door. We say, hello, is there anyone there? But we rarely close that door again.
Yes. It's quite interesting you say that, Barry, because there's a few people in the chat saying the CE5 in particular. What's your thoughts, Barry?
Yeah. The very same thing. Back in the 1970s, there was a university in the US that did this. They were way before Stephen Greer's work, and they ended up inviting phenomena in that included poltergeist activity, apparitions appearing in their rooms as they slept at night. Their homes were invaded, and they were open to physical attack, to never mind spiritual attack. And these creatures were appearing within their property as well. Now, that was back around, I think, 1970. the experiments had to be stopped. And there were side effects from those experiences that the students weren't prepared for. They didn't exactly know what they were doing. Now, moving forward into the 1970s, we've got the experiments that were being conducted in the Livermore laboratories, in which scientists were establishing contact with this energy. And again, it appears and appeared in broad daylight. And it should be pointed out that there was things, including strange birds, huge birds, in fact, that were appearing in the bedrooms of the scientists. There were, in one instance, there was an arm appeared with a hook on the end, and it twisted the hand around as if showing off the hook on the arm, rotated in the middle of their hotel room. They thought they were going crazy, and they were instructed to stop what they were doing. And they ended up the experiments were cancelled. But move forward 25 years, and we find the same phenomena was appearing within the silence rooms of the Skull experiment in England. Mm-hmm. The only difference is that the entities there said that we had to do it in darkness. Well, why? 25 years before, you could do it in broad daylight.
Yeah.
And so again, the contradictions were there, but the phenomena was almost identical, including the hands that appeared, and you know, the sitters would check up the arms, and after the elbow, there was nothing. Physical manifestation was occurring, and I think we get lost in this idea of nuts and bolt craft, because anything can be manifested. And
that's what I was thinking.
Anything can be manifested. And those experiments show this, that anything can be manifested. But the problem is here, you see, within the modern approach, we've got this idea that, well, we can manifest. We can put it out to the universe and we can manifest. I want this to manifest into a banana. I believe it's a banana. Mm-hmm. It's still a pen. So the problem, you see, there's a lot of theory out there, very little practice. So that's I think from my perspective, that's what I want to change. I want to address this theory. I want to challenge the theory, and I want to see what information we can gain from that. Something that we can, as a species, we can learn from, we can develop from. And work from that. The human body, I feel, is exceptional. It is a wonderful piece of technology that can really glide along this area of metaphysics and science. We have this innate ability to do that, but we can also hinder it. But that's a different story altogether. Yes.
It's very interesting, Barry, because say you said that the scientists were going back to their rooms and they were experiencing like a hook or a hand coming out the wall. Mm-hmm. Maybe they were exposed to something that affected them, and when they went to their bed at night, maybe they were doing it with their brain.
You would think that, but their wives were also experiencing it as well, so they weren't part of the experience. Right. Were part of the experiment.
Yeah, right. Lisa.
So basically, if you were out ghost hunting and something like that happened, that's a moment that I would remember. I definitely would remember that. But no, I mean, there's such a wide thought process on all of this, and everybody has their own opinion. Everybody's going to form their own opinion, you know. And I was listening to your book, going, wow, because just like everything else in life, I don't agree with everybody, and it's okay. And I'm sitting here going, but wow, there's a lot of things in here I said at the beginning, I already heard. Mm-hmm. I had already heard about a lot of this, and it wasn't from the side as well, by the way. So, and I think Chris could probably, maybe I guess maybe it was with Oz or something, but I've heard some of my guides say, okay, well, this is who I've been through history. I change my faces to accommodate the population. And so you started talking about that. I was like, okay, all right. But there was just so much in your book that was just absolutely fascinating. shining ones. Can you define and tell a little bit about the shining ones?
Nemesis.
I encourage everybody. So let me do this really quickly. Everybody, if you have not liked and followed this page, either Facebook, YouTube, however you are, please go ahead and do that. But I do encourage you to go buy the book, The Deceptions of God and Man by Barry, because Barry Fitzgerald is on Amazon. You guys can find it there. You can find it in the links below. But you guys, I want to hear about the shining ones. So here we go.
Here we go.
The shining ones are a series of energies, beings, whatever you want to call them, that appear. Again, we're looking at the rock strata, so they tend to appear around predominantly these areas. Now, when we come against something that is for our benefit, there's a lot to learn from the first 20 seconds. We call it the 20-second rule. This is not spoken about in the book, but what tends to happen is that within the first 20 seconds, our instinct, our intuition, our gift of discernment is giving us the information, and that is relayed physically through the body. And we can actually measure that within science. So this response that's coming through from our instinct, from our psychic ability, if you like, is telling us this is not what it seems, or this is okay. If our body does not respond in certain ways within the first 20 seconds, generally it's going to be okay. But when your body responds in fear, when your fight or flight is kicking in, that is your instinct telling you this is not as it seems. Get ready to move. So when these shining ones tend to appear, we get modern religion would jump all over these and call them various apparitions of Our Lady and Saint, whoever it would be. That's what these are, but that is not the case, because when we go back and we look at these appearances, especially in the very early instances, the very early accounts, when, for instance, if we look at Medjugorje over in Eastern Europe, where Our Lady appears every Tuesday to deliver messages, when this particular entity appeared on the top of the mountain, the children who witnessed her were stunned to fear. So their instinct was telling them this is not as it seems, but by the 20 seconds, that was it. That was shut down. And that's the 20-second rule. Because after we go past the 20 seconds, they can interfere with our brain rhythm. And what I'm theorizing is that after the 20 seconds, we're being pushed into a theta rhythm. And that's where we tend to get hypnotic suggestion implanted. That's where meditation will happen. That's where we will attain false memory. So that's what we suspect is happening there at that particular moment. Now, when we go and we look at Lourdes, for instance, or Lourdes in France, you've got Saint Bernadette there, who had this encounter again in a rock, in the cave system, of this being that stepped out and she didn't know who it was. And this was her words. She did not know who this was. And this being mimicked her as she went through the rosary. Never spoke to her, just mimicked her. Now, the church, of course, took that account and then smoothed it off to what it is today. But in the early accounts, she did not recognize who it was. The statues that were created on behalf of the church, she didn't recognize. In fact, she insisted that is not what I saw. The being itself was smaller than Bridget, and Bridget was small. So this creature was smaller than her. And a more telling feature is that she referred to it as that thing. Not as Our Lady. It was that thing. And in fact, I have a friend who's a practicing medium as well in Maine, and she was in Lourdes this year. This year, and she was pleading pleading on her knees to leave. Her instinct was screaming at her, get the hell out of here. So there's a lot more of that happens, but of course we're not told about it. I get a lot of the information that comes back through the pipeline, but for the mainstream, nobody really gets to hear about this stuff. So that's why I challenge the shining ones. Who are they? What are they? What do they want? What do they really want? And why do they appear 10 years before major outbreaks of war? So that to me speaks volumes. And the fact that they're appearing in magnetic anomalies that are also associated with sacrifice and blood worship.
Yeah.
Right. Interesting. Very interesting. And it's when these miracles manifest, and they get covered over by the church, it creates this huge following of people. They have no idea what they're actually standing behind.
Fed into it like a production.
Yeah, and I agree with that 20 seconds. That do I like this person? I'm one of those people that I'm like, I don't think so.
Yes.
And I'll just move on. But yeah, I can agree with that. That I never really thought about it as a time frame kind of thing, but that's interesting. And I was quite interested in what you were saying in your book about how they had covered over, or basically, the Mary visions, they're covering that over as well, kind of like this is, watch over here kind of thing. It's fascinating. Yeah. And you have you have this huge wide range of people that are going to give you information. You get to collect all this, and yes. I really appreciate you making it, accessible to everybody to be able to digest it in a way that makes sense and is, we can go, now I see how that relates to what we actually do in real life. So, awesome. What kind of ghost hunting questions do we have, Chris?
I'm still stuck on this theory. I'm still stuck on this theory because I've got my friend that I talked to, right, and it's made me think, who is he? Because when it comes to me, he's told me he's I don't even think he's a he, right? I don't know if he's a he or a she, right? But he's told me that over the thousands of years, he's played different people. So it's making me wonder, who is this entity? I mean, Lisa, you're in the same boat as me because you've got, is it Oz that comes to you?
Yeah, Oz, and I even hate to say, I work with a collective of the Oracle of Delphi. So the women that have lost their lives over time, it's a significant amount of women over the, that tradition that they did.
Well, a lot of the Oracle of Delphi, of course, shared similarities with a lot of the various areas back in the day where communication was easier to happen, where the veil was thinner. And the likes of the Oracle of Delphi was interpreting what was coming through the veil, through the doorways, which generally tends to be guarded. Well, not guarded. Guarded would be the wrong term, but where the information was coming through on the mouths of serpents. And that's an interesting aspect because we find serpent worship goes back 70,000 years into Botswana. And so serpent worship is nothing new. It's been going for a very, very long time. But when we cross that over and start looking at the connections with the mounds, with the stones, with the underground, like the Oracle of Delphi, and this connection with wisdom, because the serpents were communicating wisdom from beyond, and biblically, of course, there's this idea of Eve, the female, working with the serpent at the tree of knowledge, and of course that became completely bastardized and changed into something that it wasn't meant to be. But the Oracle of Delphi was another one of those key areas where we tended to find that these beings that were coming through were giving information on communities, on how to rule communities, politics, government, weapons, war. All of that was being addressed. Now, when we move forward and we move into the modern 1960s, 1968, there was a aeronautics firm, Douglas something or other. I can't remember the second name, but they openly used money from the corporation to make contact with aliens through the use of a Ouija board. Now, I know that we may laugh at the idea, but I've actually got the paperwork to show that this was being done. They were trying to gain information on how to develop advanced engine design from so-called aliens by using Ouija boards. Now, when we go and we look at this particular paperwork, I've got a red marker and I go, no, I can see all the warning signs within this paperwork, which they were missing. But what this voice was communicating, what these voices were communicating, were on community behaviors, on sociology, on warcraft, on government. It was the same stuff that was being delivered through the Oracle of Delphi. So the same stuff has been going on hundreds and hundreds and thousands of years. But when we look at the idea of, for instance, guardian spirits, guardian angels, there's a great title, Guardian Angels. You have to trace that back into time and see where that change was happening. You see, from when we go back into the Roman period, you've got this idea that anyone who was gifted with the arts, with writing, with poetry, with music, they were listening to their genius. Their genius was always outside, not inside, where we believe it is today. No, this was something that was outside, influencing the way we react. So that, in principle, is the movement from our guardian angel back into genius. But when you push that back further, and a lot of people will resist the idea that genius is not connected to jinn, it is connected to jinn. Because when we go back into Syria and I can't remember Palmyra, the city that was heavily bombed, but when we go back into Palmyra, that was the central focal point for the development of working with jinn, and aiding and having benefits of jinn accompany people across the desert to keep them safe from the bad jinn. But it was all of the same coin. So obviously we have to understand that what we're communicating with is nothing more than what was identified back 2,000 years as a jinn. And that goes back further and further and further. And when we get into Mesopotamia and beyond, because it does go beyond, we lose the track, we lose the trail, because there's no written word.
Right.
But we introduced the idea of the mound builders. They do exist pre-Mesopotamian time. You've got the Eubidians who have the mound builders there. And they were a very sophisticated culture as well. We know very, very little about them though. But the mound builders, of course, we see moving from the Middle East across into Western Europe. And we see the mound building continuing over in the Americas as well.
That's what I find very interesting, Barry. This is what I'm going to ask you here is, obviously they've travelled to Ireland and Scotland to build those mounds, right?
Yeah.
Were they an ancient civilization that are very technologically advanced, right? Because let's face it, they're travelling thousands of miles. What happened to them? Why? Because if they were still here, obviously, you probably wouldn't be. Was there some cataclysm? Was there some war? Why?
There's some, well, from their particular standpoint, yes, it was good to continually move. You know, you want to redevelop, you want to set up somewhere new. But were they coming over in hundreds of thousands? Probably not. You just needed enough to come across to get the movement rolling, so to speak. And the DNA analysis has showed us that, yes, they were here from Mesopotamia. That's beyond doubt. But they actually came down through the Orkney Islands first.
Right.
So they came down through Scotland first before they came to Ireland. And then Stonehenge would have been one of the last structures built. So there was a lot going on at that particular time, but there's some controversial analysis of the DNA which has been done recently, and it has shown that those particular builders of the passage chambers and the way that they mixed with the people already here, they were wiped out because the invading force that came in behind them destroyed the male lineage. So all of that knowledge is lost. So those people who were coming in are inheriting a land they know very little about. So there was a lot of that we have to contend with, and that unfortunately is a problem when we're dealing with an oral tradition. That when we roll into that particular type of destruction, it really is virtually lost until we make connection, proper connection, of course, from beyond.
Lisa, would you like to ask any questions before we jump to the ghost hunting?
Oh no, I was just jumping to the ghost hunting.
Would you like to ask any ghost hunting questions? Because I know that you're an avid ghost hunter, Lisa. You know.
I'm not as avid as I used to be. So really quickly, my son was 10 years old when Ghost Hunters, the original, come out. And that's how I got into all this, like, craziness in my life. And so we were very avid watchers over time. I need to know what your favorite investigation was.
See, you went punch that one for me. You've used your psychic energies.
I know. It's not how it works. This isn't Hollywood. Get over it. No.
I would. I think there was quite a few, but the likes of Costa Rica, it had its beautiful majesty at night, because of the bioluminescence in the water that I saw for the first time. I'd never seen that before, and so I was there witnessing that, and that made a huge impact on me. The likes of Nicaragua, we stayed there, and I climbed at night on top of an old Mayan temple and lay down on stars as the moon came over the top of the jungle canopy. I knew at that particular point that was a once in a lifetime deal, and so I accepted that and just lived in that moment. Argentina, amazing horses, and I love horse riding, and
got me at horses. So
I suppose when we're looking at the paranormal phenomena, there were some places that I found really held a lot of importance, and one of those was Dracula's castle in Panari. Because we ended up, we couldn't find Dracula. We tried everything, and I even called him Mr. V, and he was nothing, nothing at all from him. But the night before, and Lisa, you will recognize this. I was visited the night before by this energy who came on the back of lions, and it was a woman. She was furious that I was there, and I thought, what on earth is this about? Because there was no communication between her and me. It was just her anger at me being at the castle. What are you doing here? Leave now. And I thought, okay, well, I don't know what this is in relation to. So we went up, we investigated the castle, and nothing. Not even so much as a mouse fart did we record that. It was pretty much over. But during the EVP session, I in my mind I switched the EVP questions from Vlad to this woman, and there was one Class A response came back that particular night. Leave now. That was it. Now, it was a decade later from the work that I'm doing now that I find out that the symbol of the Order of the Dragon that Vlad's father was part of was also a Babylonian esoteric symbol. The woman who was standing on the back of the lions was Astarte, the goddess of war for Mesopotamia. What the heck were they practicing at that castle?
That is so cool, though. I mean, that's high level stuff, man.
It's infuriating from my perspective because this is 10 years later, and I'm finding it. You know,
but what did you do to piss off Astarte? I mean, come on.
Just be there.
You must have done something else.
Pick up your toys and go home right now. That's high level stuff.
The likes of that, and Chillingham Castle was another one where I had a visitation before the investigation happened, and this particular lady, she appeared to me. She was deeply annoyed that she was being associated with and misrepresented by the lady in white, this lady Isabel or whatever her name was, who was said to flow around the place. She was annoyed because this girl was. She said to me, "I am that person." She showed me the way that she died. She showed me where she died. She showed me where she come from in London. She showed me the direction the stream ran and the side that it ran down the castle. I knew none of this. She also showed me the inside of the castle, the way the layout was when she stayed there. And when we arrived at location, I immediately went to the stream and found it where it was that she showed me. The direction of the stream was also correct. And it was near the end of the investigation. We were in the library because the layout of the place was different. It wasn't what she had showed me. And I thought, oh, well, this is just nonsense. It's my own imagination. And in the library, we came across the maps from the 1970s, or the plans of the 1970s, and there was the apartment, the way that she had showed me. Now, she also showed me where her remains were.
Oh.
But I didn't do it. I didn't look, because if we go and we find remains, then the whole place is shut down. Right. And for an investigation that's costing a huge amount of money, the last thing I want to do is to get the thing shut down. So I chose to step back from that. I understood who she was, and that she was not Lady whoever. I recognized that, but I couldn't go to where her bones were.
No. I mean,
that's a sin. To think she's probably still there.
Yeah. More than likely still there. Yeah.
Right.
Can I ask you, has anything ever followed you home to the home that you're in right now?
Of course, many times. You know, I hear Lisa talking about, these things follow you home. Yeah, all the time. And there are defenses that we can use, which one in particular that I find is more or less bulletproof. There are some that will say, well, you can go through the esoteric practice of covering yourself in light and all the rest. Really, your own defenses are going to be your responsibility. But as a blunt instrument, I find that iron is very, very good. And amulet around the neck and amulet is exceptionally good. Again, when we look at this crossing of the phenomena into the different periods or into the different identities, if we go back into the Semitic demons, the incubus and succubus, 9 times out of 10 they attack women more than men, and they attack the women. They wait. They attack the women usually as they enter their monthly cycle, when they become anemic, the iron count goes down in the body.
Oh.
So it's almost like waiting on their prey, and they can't affect us any other way. So that's an important thing to remember.
It makes you interesting, very interesting that, because it makes you, these entities have obviously got they're sensitive to iron.
Oh, they have Achilles. The jinn can be annihilated with iron. The fairy can be dissuaded with iron. The evil eye can be dissuaded with iron. Again, iron is a good all-rounder, because we're possibly looking at the same blasted source of the phenomenon. It just comes in different appearances.
Question for you, Barry. How did it all start for you in the ghost hunt? Obviously, I know you've told us before about this, but how did it all start on the TV side? How did it all start for you on the TV side? How did you get into that?
The ghost hunters team were coming across to Ireland, and they were investigating Let Castle, and they needed someone there, just like a fixer. And I was asked would I consider doing it, and I said yeah, sure, no problem. And whenever I arrived there, I find out that Steve Gonzalez was afraid to fly, so they were one man down, and they said, would you mind going in front of the camera? And I said, yeah, sure, whatever, that's fine. And lo and behold, it turned out to be one of the highest rated shows in the series history. And about several months after that, I got a phone call at home, and it was from Los Angeles, and they said, we're doing a spin-off show, we're doing an international show, would you consider joining the team? And I said, sure, yeah. And that was it. So.
I honestly, I loved the show. I mean, I would sit down and look forward to it coming on. You know, it was kind of my highlight of the week.
Yeah, I was really, from our perspective, we really wanted to try and break away from the cookie cutter format. And
good.
I after we had finished season 3.5, I flew down to Singapore, and there I was arranging locations there that we would investigate, which were going to challenge the team physically, never mind spiritually, because I felt that there needed to be more there to connect us to the phenomena, and I wanted to show what we were going through to get to these places, because of course, all of a sudden we're there, we're on the radio, we're talking to each other, what's happening, but you don't know how we were getting there, what trouble we were facing to get there. The amount of things that we had to go through and get things organized and never mind try and get our equipment released from being seized by various different unscrupulous people. It was a complication, and there's one investigation that we were going to, and the local authorities were cutting people with machetes within hours before we arrived. To me, there was great value in showing this. And this is the world, not this Las Vegas one. This is the world that we live in. And this is what we have to go through to do this. And which I thought that that was a wasted opportunity, I felt. And it was something that we wanted to readdress. But it wasn't to be. And that was that.
Your show was brilliant.
Yeah. No.
Your show was brilliant. There was one of the cases, and I can't remember its location. It was a fort. I think it was South America. It was some type of fort, and somebody got attacked. Do you know what that one was? I'll see if I can remember what that was. You want to go, Lisa?
Okay. No. So what I wanted to say, I actually want to ask is, do you find that from the time you started doing investigations to the time that all concluded, that you found a deeper connection to spirit, like you could pick things up more, just reaching out there, asking for information? Do you find you had more communication just naturally evolve because of what you were doing?
I would probably have to say no.
Okay.
You see, when I started out in this, Lisa, I was very much adamant and convinced science will answer everything. There is nothing else. It's all science. But in regards to mediumship, I thought, no, this isn't possible. You know, there is here and now with our senses, and then there's the next step over is imagination. Mm-hmm. So I needed to put my own neck on the line and understand, well, what do they believe they're experiencing? And I went through a course to develop mediumship ability. Mm-hmm. And it was during that initial first day that I was introduced to the phenomena, and I realized there is a fine line between imagination and psychic ability and mediumship tendencies. And from that particular point, then I moved across to that, explored that particular area, and I've used it ever since. Now, I think probably coming from a Celtic heritage, that is much easier possibly from my standpoint, and coming from the island here in Ireland, it was easier for me as well. Granted, we do have the church, the controlling factor of the church, but outside of that, in the countryside and things like that, you know, we have great freedoms to explore our spiritual sides and connect to the land and the things that's in the land. That all helped develop in what I did. And behind the camera, because we weren't allowed to show any of that stuff, right. We had to keep it all scientific. Now, my argument was that it's not scientific. It's no more scientific than a fly crawling up a wall. And I nearly got fired because I wouldn't use the term scientific. I said, we're doing a technical investigation into the paranormal. That's the line I'm going to give you. Well, right. We're going to have to phone Los Angeles, and you could get fired from this. And I said, well, that's okay. I don't mind. And then they came back and said, okay, we're going to accept that line. And that was it.
Yeah. I do love, and I think what I liked about Ghost Hunters International was the aspect of you looked at it very practically and did try to figure out what was going on. Instead of just running in there and trying to gather information and then looking at the hind end of it saying, well, this sounds like, and right now I don't watch any ghost programs at the moment because it's all fluff. It's a lot of it's not all of it, but most of it is fluff.
There's a couple out there that I watch. I watch like the Holzer Files and stuff like that. That was good. But the other kind of stuff.
Yeah. And I don't like people going out and poking at energies. Like, I come out or you're, no.
Yeah.
No. I find that offensive. So, interesting.
So Barry, do you think you'll ever be back on TV again? Do you think you'll be restarting the gang up again?
I would imagine that the gang won't be starting up, but who knows what's ahead of me. Yeah. That's all I can say in that particular.
Is there something you're not telling us?
Oh, obviously.
My psychic energies. Oh, you'll need to tell us, So, Lisa, would you like to ask anything else before we end the show?
I have tons of questions, but we also have I want to know when you guys are going to Dracula's castle. I saw Dakota say you guys are going to Dracula's. What? What? I like to travel. Anyhow, just letting you know that. I travel a lot. Okay. And do what?
I was just saying, Dakota's in the chat, my other co-host. He's saying he wants to take me to Dracula's castle. So we could all go together at the adventure. We'll take.
Well, there was four main castles, so make sure you get the right one.
That's why we'll take you. You can show us where to go.
Yeah, we'll figure that one out. Yeah. But you guys, I'd like to say again, make sure you go out and get his new book, The Deceptions of God and Men. He has a plethora of other books over here. The Myths of Gods, a Legend Seekers series, The Banshee, The Malice of Darkness, and a couple other books that I have a list here, you guys. And I'm sure that there's links to be able to find them.
Everything is below, all the links, and if you go to our website, you will find all the links there too, to Barry's books, every book that he's done. Everything is there, so please, guys, please, perfect time of the year. It's coming. Christmas is not far away, you know. Time to buy a present for someone that likes reading the book, you know.
And I have to say, it really does spark your thought processes. So the deceptions of God. I mean, I was sitting. My husband's so tired of me calling him about it, because I'm like, oh wait, listen to this. So he doesn't even have to listen to the book anymore, because I've already done that. And so it really does spark your thought processes, you guys. And you know, we do encourage a lot of people in the chat are from My Mystical Life, and we really do encourage like bouncing ideas off of each other, because nobody is going to have the one solution, you know. And they know we like to put science to stuff too. So this is my kind of talk here. I like this.
Well, I've actually started reading it again. I read it really quick over the space of 4 days, so I've started going slower this time.
I need to get the actual book. I need to get the actual books. You know, I can listen to the audio, but I really need to be able to read it and to digest it.
I want to get my one signed by you, Barry. One of these days, if we ever meet up, I need to mine signed.
One of these days, yeah. Who knows where the future will have me, but if our paths cross, I will bring a pen.
But there you go. You see? There's Lisa.
I'm coming to Ireland eventually. It's happening. I don't know when.
It's going to be a chap at your door, Barry. There's an American woman's going to stand with their suitcase.
My husband will be with me and go, would you just shut her up? Just talk to her for like a couple hours and just shut her up. No, he would never say that. No. But
oh dear, I just don't know. Well, ladies and gentlemen, tonight has been fantastic. I'll talk to Barry and Lisa behind the scenes once we end this. And tomorrow night we are talking to Mike, the Naked Bigfoot. We are talking to the real truth. Mike the Naked Bigfoot. I know it's a brilliant name that he's got. But actually, he's a voodoo priest, and we're actually going to be talking about the real zombification in the voodoo culture. The real zombification. So obviously the made up stuff for the Walking Dead and stuff like that. You know. But ladies and gentlemen, I'll play the credits and I'll see you all tomorrow night, and thank you everybody for coming, and please visit and buy his book for Christmas. Buy it for anybody, your uncle, your auntie, everybody can have it, you know. Right. Catch you later, guys. Bye.
All right.